Welcome to Building the Future, hosted by Kevin Horick. With millions of listeners a month, Building the Future has quickly become one of the fastest rising programs, with a focus on interviewing startups, entrepreneurs, investors, CEOs, and more. The radio and TV show airs in 15 markets across the globe, including Silicon Valley. For full showtimes, past episodes, or to sponsor the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com.
Do you have an app idea that you've been dreaming about but don't know how to actually start building it? Use Bubble. I've been using Bubble for a number of years now. It's an extremely powerful no-code platform that enables you to build, launch, and scale real products without investing thousands of dollars on engineers, designers, or spending time trying to code it yourself. Use Bubble's visual drag and drop tool to create really anything from marketplaces, SaaS products, and so much more. Join over 2 million people, including myself, already using Bubble to launch and grow businesses. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Burhan Fatah. He's the chairman and CEO at Sivoo. Burhan, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show today. I think what you guys are doing at Sivoo is actually really innovative and cool. You also have a really impressive background, and you've done some pretty incredible things, especially with your early days on the internet. But maybe before we get into that, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Sure. I finished my education in Europe. I was born in Pakistan, and then I came to Europe for higher education. And I finished my studies in physics. Actually, I got a PhD in physics, in particle physics. And those early years in my career, they were instrumental because I got to meet some incredible people. And I also got to work at some incredible places. One of those places being CERN. And CERN is the largest particle physics lab in the world. And during my student years, I got to meet Tim Berners-Lee there. And he created an app for scientists to communicate among themselves. I was fortunate enough to use that application in its early days, and that application eventually became the World Wide Web. So my involvement with World Wide Web goes right from the inception. Then I moved to the US, and I switched to more computer industry. And in that capacity for the past 20 plus years, I've been involved with various types of companies, online media and entertainment, social media, cloud, mobile computing, and IT management. Within that capacity, part of my job was work was on Sivoo, the parent company of Sivoo, which was Broad Relay. I started that company back in 2000, and that, if you recall that at that time, broadband was just introduced by, I believe, Verizon. Before that, up to 1999, we were still on the dial-up, and video obviously wouldn't work very well on dial-up connections. And that was the early days. We practically have to invent, develop everything. There was no open source software. There was no compression technologies. There were not even video standards very well defined. And so for the first few years, between 2000 and 2005, we mostly worked on developing new technologies. The initial focus of my company was to bring international programming to the US audience. US was the only country which was connected over high-speed internet. So we brought international programming and streamed in the US. So that's my background in terms of entertainment and media, mostly online.
Fascinating. Okay. So walk us through what
Sivoo is today? Because there's been a lot that's happened on the internet, never mind just the video space in, that period of time, right?
Yes. So yeah, I mean, so the internet, I have seen pretty much the entire internet evolution starting 2000, which was a banner year,
Yeah.
and until now, and it has gone through a lot of iterations. As I said, there were not a lot of technologies available at that time, so we had to pretty much invent everything. Content was not readily available because content providers, they were not sure if what is this new media. Uh,
Right.
it,
Which
it
is
was
funny
very hard to
today.
get.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But keep going. Sorry.
exactly. Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was very hard to get content, but after a lot of convincing and talking to various content providers, I used to attend a lot of conferences to acquire content. Initially, they were very reluctant to give us any licensing rights, but after they saw us a few times, then they got more comfortable. By the mid 2000s, the word was out as well that video streaming is, becoming more ubiquitous, and so that allowed us to start licensing professional content, and we ended up having actually one of the largest libraries of online content distribution by 2005
Wow.
at that time, and worked with some incredible companies at that time, and especially worked with so in 2006 Amazon introduced the public cloud. I mean, that was the first public offering, so we were in that cloud like pretty much right away. That was my first introduction to a public cloud, and we were like the first video streaming company in the cloud, and so that was a great relationship. It's hard to believe where AWS is today compared with
Sure.
2006. Um, they had absolutely no service, no instances other than just their elastic computing EC2. They didn't even have S3, which is the database, just one app. And today
Interesting.
they have over 200 apps, and and so it was a very initial stages of that program. Then what happened in 2007 when Apple introduced iPhone? We were looking into mobile even before that, so that was a major revolution, both in terms of internet connectivity and in terms of video streaming. Netflix then launched it. Okay, before Netflix launched, there was obviously a recession in 2000, end of 7, 8, which affected a lot of companies. There was a lot of activity in video streaming at that time,
Right.
and that affected the entire industry. A whole uh, series and bunch of companies, even very well funded, they went out of business. That was a very tough time because nobody was really generating any revenue at that time. It was just some kind of market creation phase, user adoption phase. And that turned out to be the biggest blessing, for example, for Netflix, because they launched right around that time. They switched over, didn't exactly switch over. They also added video streaming alongside their DVD business. And then in 2009, on the other side of the recession, the whole industry started gaining momentum, but there were hardly any players left because most of those players were wiped out. We also had a lot of setbacks during that period of time. And so the market then from there on, it started developing quite a bit more. And I would say between 2009, 10 until today, this is pretty much the golden era of video streaming. And we have seen this progression. Other countries caught up. More services became available in many other countries. U.S. started picking up more and more companies getting involved. HBO's and Hulu came in 2011, and so on. So this thing pretty much picked up since that point. So now fast forward to today, and today is a very interesting market, and we had to change our business model accordingly. Um, Video streaming was pretty much concentrated until a few years ago in the US. And as a result, all the global bigger companies, they were all based in the US, whether it's, I just mentioned a few of them, whether it's Netflix, whether it's Disney, Hulu, and, Paramount, HBO's, the list goes on and on. Even Amazon Prime, we can include in that category. But what happened is US market became extremely saturated. It is very saturated market today. More than 80% of the households today in the US, they have at least one video streaming subscription. Many households, multiple. So the opportunities are getting harder and tougher to add any more users because pretty much anyone who needs a video streaming service, they have it. The situation is very different actually on the international scene. In many other countries, especially emerging markets, those markets are where US was 10 years ago. And they are pretty much at the early stages of adoption. It's growing much faster than the US market grew because there were a lot of other issues, infrastructures and smartphone penetration and so on. But today, if a smartphone is in the hands of over 5 billion people across the globe. That's where they get most of their broadband services. And as a result, the video streaming is growing extremely fast in many countries. And we are lucky to be in those markets. We switched over our business model. We still have a good presence in the US, but bulk of our focus right now is in emerging markets in Asia, Latin America, uh, and Africa, of course. And we are seeing a tremendous growth in many of those markets. Our We have millions of users currently in roughly about 100 countries. Some
Wow.
countries is a very small footprint. Other countries we have a lot bigger presence. And the way we distribute content today, uh, we are uh, we are essentially not doing retail or direct to consumer. We work with global telcos who are the gatekeepers of the internet, mobile operators, ISPs, if there are any left. And they become our distribution platforms. We have agreements with them. We bring content, we bring technology, and they give us access to their user base, and that seems to be working exceptionally well.
Okay, so let's dive a little bit deeper into that. So like uh like Verizon, for example, would build their own video streaming app and you would provide them content. Is that correct? Or how does that work?
Well, we are not working with Verizon today, but we did work with Verizon. Actually,
Okay.
Sivoo was the first service when they launched their IPTV service, Verizon Fios, when it was launched back in 2006 or 7, I believe, that time frame.
Right.
We had the first three international channels on Verizon Fios.
Oh, cool.
Yes, and but then because of recession and all that, Verizon Fios didn't really grow very well,
Okay.
and speed was very slow. Today we are indirectly distributing content through Verizon, and I'll get to that. But we are not providing any content today to Verizon. But we did provide hundreds of international movies and television programming to Verizon's in the past. Today they have their own IPTV network. They have their own users over fiber. Since our focus is not too much on the US markets right now.
Right.
But there is absolutely, we are going to be working with them. They are distributing some of our content today but on a different platform, not on their own a platform, which is IPTV. It's a different platform, which I'll talk about a little later.
Okay. Very cool. So how well, you've obviously been doing this a long time. You've had to pivot probably a number of times, and maybe not just like full pivots, but small pivots. And you've been through, some recessions. How have you stayed relevant and adapted? Because I think a lot of companies are going through that right now.
Yes. Exactly. Right now, this is actually a pretty tough market for online video in general. I mean, we see almost all companies are affected by that, and there are reasons for that. And if you want me to go a little deeper into
Sure.
those reasons, I'll be more than happy to.
Sure.
um, what's happening is that most of, as I mentioned, most of the bigger companies in the world, they were mostly based in the US. And they didn't really go out that much. I mean, even companies such as Hulu's, they have strictly just USA based, and Paramount, and most of these companies. Netflix has gone international, but bulk of their user base is still in the US. Disney tried a little bit international. They are kind of, I mean, they have other issues they're dealing with. So this has been a very tough market because everyone is trying to compete in a market which is saturated.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons why these companies are having issues increasing their revenue base or user base. Number two is that the expectations from some of the larger companies was that they were going to make a lot of money from video streaming fairly quickly, and that it didn't turn out to be that way. Video streaming obviously is cheaper than traditional media, where you got your feed from cable channels and so on, which were very lucrative business. Video streaming revenues are not close to those numbers even today in the US. I think international markets represent the biggest opportunity. Think about this way: USA has about 3% of the global population. 97% of the people live outside the US. We have about 300 million phones out of over 5 billion smartphones in the world. So that means majority of the people who are potential customers, candidates, or who can use video streaming services, they are international. Now, there are major challenges of going international, especially for many American companies who are very used to charging high payments, subscription fees, as well as dealing with the, cultural issues and so on. They are very familiar with. Going international poses a whole new challenge, and I've been studying international markets for being an international, having myself an international background. It's easier for me. I have lived on 4 continents, so
Oh,
I
nice.
understand the culture, speak several languages. So I can relate to many of those things, and I can see where the problems are. And we are trying to solve some of those problems. Problem number one is obviously the cultural issues and the language issues. When you go to Africa, Asia, almost every country speaks a different language, so you have to be pretty comfortable. There is still a lot of government bureaucracy, red tapes, and so on, so you have to get through that process. Number three, infrastructures are still pretty bad. They are not as advanced developed as in the US and Western Europe and so on. Many emerging markets, they're working very hard and developing very fast, but they are still not as developed. And number four, which is the most important point for many of these providers, is that the price points are much, much lower. In US, you can offer a video streaming service, Netflix, for example, they can charge $15. Most other countries, emerging markets, $4 will be considered as a high subscription fee. The issue then becomes, because the way many of these bigger companies are set up, it's very hard for them to offer services, high quality content for $2 3 a month subscription and still be profitable. And that's turning out to be the biggest challenge for their penetration globally. We knew these things several years ago when we started working on this project going international. And the way we constructed our business model was that even if we sell a subscription, say a couple of dollars per user, or if we are making money through ad supported content for a couple of dollars a month, we are still profitable. A business model was built that way. Another challenge was the infrastructure challenge. And in order to overcome that infrastructure challenge, we made a decision early on, about 3 4 years ago, that we are going to build our own CDN for global distribution, essentially building our own private cloud to distribute this content to the far reaches of the planet. And that strategy turned out to be a great strategy because that allowed us to partner with global telcos, bigger telcos. Many telcos have a lot more users than Verizon's or AT&T in the US. For
Right.
example, China had the two largest telcos in the world. India has the third largest telco, which is Geo. MTN in Africa have 200. They have 280 million users, and so on. That's a large user base. But the problem is that a lot of these telcos are local. Many of those telcos are not global, so they don't have any
Right.
presence
Interesting.
outside their countries or outside their regions. So the question then becomes, how do you deliver this content to these companies? And yes, you can use traditional methods. You can transfer this data over a public cloud. You can provide satellite feeds and all that, but that is cumbersome. They can get very expensive, and you don't have any control, especially some of the emerging markets where you're going to. So our cloud idea ended up become the big winner, because we were able to deploy our data centers very close to where these telcos are stationed, or where they are based at. And we were able to directly connect our data centers to their data network. And that way, there was no latency. As you know, latency is the biggest killer in
Yeah.
video distribution. Few milliseconds can make a huge difference, because that degrades the quality of the video, and nobody wants to see the buffering and all
Yeah.
that, low quality videos. So that strategy is working very well. We today have 4 data centers on 3 continents, and our goal is to expand those data centers into 50 countries, where we will work with our telco partners and so on to distribute this content.
Interesting. Okay, so how do you actually get the content, and then how long does it take to actually reach all those data centers? Is it like minutes, hours? Obviously probably depends on the size of, if it's a short form clip, if it's a TV show or it's a movie, or walk us through that. I guess that's kind of a two-part question.
Okay. No, it's a very good question. It goes to the heart of the matter. So, yes, without content, there wouldn't be any video streaming.
Right.
So, once we get that out of the way, so what happens to content? Yes, I mean, you can create your own content, or you can license content. There are a lot of outlets which produce content. Hollywood is the largest content production factory, I mean, on the planet. And other countries, similarly, Bollywood in India, and Japanese, they have a pretty strong content markets and so on. So almost every country has some content, at least their television programming or movies or whatever they produce. So we are not into content production business, at least not as of this moment. So we
Right.
license content. I've been personally licensing content for over 20 years, so I have a lot of experience in negotiating deals for content.
So, sorry, can I
They
ask a
can get
question?
pretty complicated, especially if yes.
Sorry, I was just going to interrupt you there. So, how do you decide which content, though? And then do you send the same content all over the world, or how does that work?
No, actually, the answer to that is a very complicated answer.
Okay.
And yes, you cannot take the same content in the same language and distribute across the globe, because that won't work. Content has to be localized into at least into the major markets.
Right.
Just to
Okay.
give you an example, yeah, let's say we take, I mean, our content we license from Hollywood and we take it to India. So
Okay.
16% of population of India speaks English, and but other 84 doesn't. So they
Right.
won't be able to understand that content and so on. So just, I mean, just streaming English content in India won't work. I mean, you may have a small user base, but not. So that means that essentially you have to. So there are two possibilities in this case. One is that you acquire content for all your major markets, specifically for that markets. India, for example, you acquire content in Hindi. If you are going into Middle East, you acquire your content in Arabic. If you're in Africa, you acquire content in Swahili. And, there are other colonial times, many of the languages are also spoken, English, French, and some Spanish and Portuguese as well. So that's challenge one. You have
Right.
to
Okay.
acquire lots of different types, I mean, language based content. That's challenge number one. Challenge number two is that you have to match that content with the viewing habits of that country. Some people, countries are more interested in telenovelas, soap type of TV series, other like movies, other like sports, and so on. This is all content, so that's the second match. We've been working on solutions, Kevin, for many of these situations for years. We have a pretty large content library. I mean, over a million videos,
Wow.
files, and many of we have over in 16 languages, and we are constantly fine tuning how to match content for different markets.
Got it.
So
Makes sense.
that's the content. Yes.
Okay, and then I guess so once you decide on which content, so then for your the CDN and your content delivery network, do you only send the proper content that's relevant to that country, that data center, or do you send everything to everything everywhere?
Okay. So that's again a great question, and again, it doesn't have a very simple answer.
Sure, fair enough.
Um, content, when you ingest content, and we delivered an entire system, which this is our proprietary technology, which deals with the entire life cycle of content. What does that mean? So you get content into your system. Let's say we license content from a player A. Let's say somebody in Ireland, we license content.
Okay.
Now you need to bring this content into your system. So, number one challenge is the content ingestion part. How do you bring that content into your system? In the old days, when I originally started, there used to be VHS tapes.
Right.
And so people just send you a whole bunch of a box full of VHS tapes. And from there, you get the content. Then it was DVD, and it was a little easier to ship more content. Then the hard drives, if there's content, you get on a hard drive. Then, when the internet speed grew a little bigger, you can do file transfers. Then there were satellite feeds you can get from transponders. The idea is to get content into your system. So
Right.
let's say we got content into our system, which we use many different ways. It comes to into our system. But that's just the beginning, because that content has to be distributed across different platforms in different places where the network speeds may not be great, and many other considerations. So first of all, when we get content, we convert that content, depending on the country, first into a flat file, and that content first of all has to be encoded in what avenue we're going to be using for distribution. Is it a mobile platform? Is it a web platform? Is it an OTT service? So content has to be adopted according to that platform. And then you see is their network connection. Is the speed, is it a great connection or is like not great connection? That will determine whether they're going to watch a standard def video, or they're going to watch a high def or 4K or 8K, because the file starts getting bigger as you start moving to higher resolutions. So those are the next decisions. So once those things are done, all this process happens within our network once we got the content. So we converted accordingly, whether it's MPEG-4 stream, whether it's H.264, H.265, ITP TV, whether it's cable lab specs, all that things taken into consideration. So that is all automated process within our network which happens. Once that is done, now the next question is how that content will be distributed. So we need to now get this content in the hands of the end user. So the way that works is, and that's where our data center strategy comes into play. We have already strategically placed data centers in Asia, Europe, and USA, and we are adding more and more nodes. There are a lot of nodes planned even for this year. So then we bring that content and by the way, all these nodes are connected, so this creates a private cloud. And the speed of transmission with a cloud is milliseconds.
Okay.
It's very, very quick delivery. Even content ingestion, just to give you an idea, one of our providers is in Ireland. So the content leaves Ireland, and it goes to. We are again changing our one of our ingestion facilities in Vietnam. That ingestion is done, and then that content is transferred over to the US, to our data center. And once we have done the rest of the processing, which I mentioned, then we forward this content to our data center in Frankfurt. From there, it gets delivered, for example, to Africa, because we have a direct connection with our partners, African partners, right from Frankfurt. We connect with this. Now, if you see, it's about 3 or 4 continent movement, which is almost happening in real time. I would say from Ireland, where the content originated, to delivery in Nigeria, going through these 3 or 4 continents in the meantime will take few milliseconds.
Wow. That's fascinating. That's cool that you can do it that fast. And then that includes, and just I think you mentioned this is, so you, if I send you like a 4K video file, you'll cut it down to 1080p, optimized for mobile, optimized for my television, and all the other different kind of form factors. That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay.
Right now we are running. Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
No,
Question.
no, keep going.
Yeah. So right now we are running 7 apps,
Okay. Wow.
7 different apps of distribution. The apps you're familiar with, I mean, Android and iOS and web app, I mean, they're accessible in the US and anyone can access them. Um, the other 4 apps are running for platforms which are not known in the US. 3 of those platforms are in India, and they are mostly running on different types of phones. Those phones are they are a semi-smartphones. They are built for the masses. They are inexpensive phones, and but you have to. This is a total different format. And so you have to convert into that format. And then similarly, all the African distribution, we're working with the world's third largest mobile operator, who also run an operating platform, which is total different. And so we have to encode according to that platform to distribute it. So yes, I mean, all these 7 platforms being distributed, and they cover most of the online streaming, part of the delivery.
Got it. Okay. Very cool. So how does AI play into all this, or does it at this point?
Okay, that's another great question. I've been looking into AI for many, many years.
Sure.
Very fascinated by AI, and AI is not a new concept. AI, first time it was mentioned was in the 50s by a Berkeley professor who kind of defined a very base level AI. So AI has been going through tremendous R&D in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And the question then is that why all of a sudden AI became such a big deal in a matter of months?
Yeah.
Part of that credit you have to give to ChatGPT. On
Sure.
November 30th, when they introduced every person a large language model, every person realized that regardless of their knowledge, even if they have zero knowledge about computers, they can still go and do some fascinating stuff. So that created a massive awareness, but it didn't happen because of that. Whenever there's a new technology, when it's talked about, it takes many, many years, in some cases decades, before that technology becomes ubiquitous or it's adopted by by the masses.
Yeah.
The reason for that is that a lot of those things are futuristic when a technology is defined, and all those things have to come into place at the same time for that thing to happen. This thing exactly happened in AI space in the last year or two. ChatGPT was the straw which broke the camel's back, but all the perfect conditions were there. And there were 2 main conditions for AI to be useful or functional. Number one is your processing power. You have to have an incredible processing power, because the concept of AI is main concept behind AI is called machine learning. That means your computer or device has to learn all the variations within that framework. So that is a learning process. Think about it as a baby, a newborn baby. A baby doesn't know anything. Baby, the moment baby opens its eyes, it start learning. It looks around, it see this is light, this is eventually sooner start realizing this is my parent, this is my mother, this is my father. And over time, that baby has become a teenager and grown up. it learns all those things. That's machine learning. So now an adult knows many things because they learned over this time frame through trial and error and through experimentation and just learning from the environment. AI functions in very similar fashion. So you need to train your AI product with all the possibilities and all the variations so your computer can give you answers which you understand or which you want it to accomplish. So that's where AI. So now AI, the horse is out of the barn, and now I think there is no looking back. And the AI, in my opinion, is the biggest revolution since the internet itself.
Interesting.
Yes, mobile was great in 2007, but AI is going to far supersede that industry. The reason for that is that AI is not something you don't have to do at the user level or as at the business level anything very different. This just sits on top of your existing systems and it
Right.
creates
Interesting.
efficiencies across the board. I mean, so if you can create more efficiencies without changing your infrastructure, that's a great deal. This is literally like an abbey sits on top of everything else you have, and it creates efficiencies, which goes to the bottom line, so you're profitable. I can't think of a single industry today which is not going to be a user of AI in the coming years. So after that, obviously, a big proponent of AI, now we have to see how AI fits into our business model and what we can do with it. So AI, we can do a lot of fascinating things with AI. We can do, for example, AI dubbing. I was just mentioning a big challenge in distribution of content across the globe because it has to be in the local languages. How about we get a large library from Hollywood and dub it into 10 different languages?
Right.
Uh, Traditionally, dubbing was a very expensive, and then we can dub the English content to French, German, Spanish, Portuguese, Hindi, Chinese, Swahili. That'll cover 80% of the global population. But the traditional problem with dubbing is, video dubbing is that it's very expensive and time consuming. You have to get all these artists, actors into your studios, record, re record, rehearsal, all that stuff which goes into it. And it becomes very expensive. Actually, hundreds of dollars per minute. This is the
Wow.
cost of dubbing. So that makes it almost impractical for dubbing large quantities of content. Here comes AI. You can train AI. You can create a model. You can train AI so it dubs automatically content. You just feed it into, okay, this movie, and it spits out in other languages. Very initial stages of this technology and its application in dubbing are already, you can see it today. I believe within a couple of years, you are going to see, or maybe even sooner, because things are moving at at breakneck speed. You're going to see a lot more content going through. That's one of the things we are developing capabilities of AI dubbing. Number
Interesting.
two is
So
that in
sorry,
many of the
can
yeah,
I interrupt
sure.
you there for a second? Um the other, and how does that play, because AI I've seen obviously generate songs that sound like the actual artist when it's not the artist. Is the technology going to be there with this dubbing that you talk about where you could use AI to talk in the original actor's voice but in a different language?
Yes, because when you watch video on any screen, videos essentially are two separate files. One is your actual video file, and other is your audio file.
Right.
And so you can process them individually. And yes, as a matter of fact, those are some of the fascinating applications. Just think about this way. Let's say you're watching one of the older James Bond movies,
Okay.
and you want to replace the actor there, Roger Moore, with Daniel Craig, right? And you will be able to do this kind of things also. So now you can create your own customized content in which you can have your own favorite star playing the role, uh, as opposed to
Yeah,
some.
that's interesting. That's cool. Okay, keep going. Sorry, the second part I interrupted you.
What was the second part? Okay, AI within art. So part of our business model is free content, which is ad supported. And the problem is that in many emerging markets, there is not enough advertisement available. So they don't even have video ads
Ah,
to run. So we are building tools which we are going to make available to the end user so they can go and create their own ads. And once the ads are created, then we can run them on our platform. So that would be a great application of AI. Number three application, as we are building more data centers, you have to find optimized paths for routing your data, and no one is better than AI. Automatic data routing. Okay, Frankfurt data center is slow, so you run it through Lisbon, or that is slow, so you run it through Paris. I mean, I'm just giving examples. So
Right.
that AI can do that. And last but not least, which is probably the most exciting part of AI in video, is that AI is going to create video. You'll be able to create entire movies within 2 years based on a script which you can generate through ChatGPT. You can plug it into an AI machine and app, and it'll be able to convert that script into video. So those are the things which are going to happen. They are coming, and we are very, very excited about it. However, the next question, I mean, in this space, you asked about how we are going to be using AI and so on. That's how we're using. But in order to incorporate AI into your data centers, that's a whole different challenge. So, what exactly you need? I don't know if you want me to go a little bit into
Sure.
how that will be implemented. It's a very complicated structure. First of all, you need to have a cloud, but how do you convert AI cloud into an AI cloud? It's a pretty complicated structure which goes several layers deep. But let me just, for the audience who may not be very technical, I just break it into three parts. So your number one, your bottom part is in this stack, which is the AI stack in a cloud environment. It includes all the infrastructure for AI, such as your servers, such as your cards, which have AI chips built in, the video cards, and so on. NVIDIA cards, you may have heard about them. They process a lot of videos, and so on. So or other forms of data. So that is the base level structure. So your capacity has to be, your processors have to be very strong GPUs rather than CPUs, although CPUs will be applicable, and all the AI hardware and so on. So that is the infrastructure. The top level are going to be the applications, which majority of what an average person is going to experience. And those applications are the kind of applications we are talking about. I mean, dubbing content or creating ad creation tools and so on. There could be all kinds of application built. Uh, I imagine there could be thousands, if not tens of thousands of applications are going to be built on that. And the third part is the middle part. It's called the middleware, and that's the most complicated part. That's where everything happens. That's where machine learning takes place. That's where the operating platform runs. That's where the data sets are placed. Now, data sets are very large databases of data which can train applications in specific areas. If you want to train on video, you need large scale video data sets. If you need training in some manufacturing, then you need large data of manufacturing where you train these applications, and so on. So those are the three rough areas. We are working on the bottom two, which is the infrastructure and the middleware. And the applications are going to be, some will be ours, but eventually we're going to open up our data centers to third party developers and so on, who can come and build their applications on our platform.
Fascinating. Okay. So in your example of, generating a movie, for example, and I obviously will have the same access, or everybody will have the same access as some of the biggest movie makers, today and tomorrow. What do you think is really going to separate, you know, good content from bad content? Because if we're all generating stuff that's pretty good or good, even, how is it going to be different or set us apart from something else? Is it creativity, or what do you think is going to be the differentiator between kind of, how people survive in this space, really?
Right. Yes, very good question. I think the days of bigger studios will be done.
Okay.
And I think mega studios. I think most of the studios are going to become more like high tech labs rather than
Okay.
studios. You still
What do you
need
mean by that?
talent.
Sorry.
Yes. Uh, So you still need talent to write scripts and so on. But I think the difference between video created by a user, I mean, an average user versus a professional studio, the difference is going to start getting, is going to get narrower and narrower.
Sure. That
And
makes
you
sense.
will be able to create, you still need a basic knowledge and so on, which people will learn. I mean, I look at YouTube and I look at the early days of YouTube. By the way, we were one of the very first partners with YouTube back in 2004
That's
5 when
cool.
they launched. And YouTube has gone tremendous iterations. I mean, it was really this herky jerky motion, people uploading videos, and now you can see fairly professionally generated video programs
Yeah.
so I think it's going to speed up that process a lot more. You will be able to generate fairly professional looking content with the tools which are available online, and you'll be able to do that. Yes.
Interesting. And then what do you think is going to separate people apart then? Like creativity?
If we really want to go really far into the future,
Okay.
and by that I don't mean 100 years, by that I mean next 4 or 5 years, that
Okay,
in
sure.
terms of AI is a very far future. I believe that at some point in the next, let's say this decade,
Okay.
you will be able to create your own personalized content based on
Oh,
some of the
interesting.
content, the way you want to watch it. You'll be able to plug in your own favorite actors to what you're watching. You'll be able to put your own favorite voices. You may be able to create more special effects on whatever you want. So if there are 8 billion people, and let's say 6 billion people, they watch video regularly on there may be 6 billion channels, everyone having their personal preferences and the way they want to watch and consume video. And this
Interesting.
means multiple things. This also means that days of blockbuster content are numbered. We have already seen that. I mean, you
Yeah.
just look at how many blockbuster movies are produced today. I mean, yeah, you have a couple of Top Guns and few. I mean, uh, there were years when they were 10, 15, 20 mega, 100, $200 million movies were produced because the user base is segmented. Now we don't watch in any one place a lot of content. Content is already getting segmented. The same television late night shows which used to draw 100 million viewers, today they draw 10 million, and they'll be lucky if they have 10 million viewers, because we have so many more options to consume video today that it's all fragmented, this whole space. And this only means that the media, which is traditionally dominated by bigger players, is getting more democratic media, and in which even average people will have the opportunity to contribute and be very creative.
Fascinating. We're kind of coming to the end of the show. So, is there anything else that you want to cover to close out the show, or any advice to anybody that's in the video space or looking to get into the video space around kind of anything we talked about today?
Sure. I mean, this is our goal is to reach out to very large number of users. Conservatively speaking, couple of billion users. That's our goal. And this is the addressable market we want to be dealing with. And we like to capture over the next few years at least 10% of that market. So if it's 2
Wow.
billion, that will translate to 200 million users. It may turn out that it can be done more than that. So we are very interested in talking to various companies. I mean, by building this value proposition together, we're looking for partnerships with the technology companies, with the content providers. Uh, we are growing our user base, and we'd love to talk to partners and even investors, because we have opportunities. We'll be open to speaking with investors as well, who are interested in getting involved with global markets, because that's the most exciting thing we see as far as we can see.
Very cool. But sadly, we're out of time. So, how about we close with mentioning where people can get more information about yourself, the company, and any other links you want to mention?
Sure, they can check my bio, although I haven't updated it in a while on LinkedIn. But you can get some corporate information on Sivoo.com, which is a website. You can go and watch actually some free television, SivooTV.com. It's a web app. You can watch there. Similarly, we have for the US markets, we have Android and iOS apps in the app stores. They are available as well. Even though bulk of our focus is and most of our content currently is targeted towards international markets, we still have enough offering for the US audience to go and check us out.
Very cool. And Sivoo is spelled Sivoo, just for
That's
people
correct.
listening. Well, Burhan, I really appreciate you taking the time of your day to be on the show. I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day, man.
Actually, thanks a lot, Kevin.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Please visit our website at buildingthefutureshow.com to join the free community, sign up for our newsletter, or to sponsor the show. The music is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.